Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox, and I'd like to welcome you to episode 199 of the FCPA Compliance and Ethics Report. The FCPA Compliance and Ethics Report is sponsored by Advanced Compliance Solutions, your one-stop shop for all things FCPA compliance related. Today I have with me Louis Sapirman. Louis is the Chief Compliance Officer at Dun & Bradstreet, or D&B. He is one of the very few CCOs who has incorporated the tools of social media into his overall compliance efforts going forward. I visit with him about the social media tools he has used and what he sees as a mechanism by which to communicate information, not only down to the troops through social media, but back up to him as the Chief Compliance Officer. The episode comes in at just over 24 minutes. It's very interesting, and I think you will enjoy it quite a lot. This is Tom Fox. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope you enjoy the episode. Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox. I'd like to welcome you to this episode of the FCPA Compliance and Ethics Report. Today, you are in for a real treat because I have Louis Sapirman, the Vice President, Associate General Counsel, and most importantly, Chief Compliance Officer at Dun & Bradstreet, to visit with us today. Louis has put together or I should probably say created and implemented one of the most unique compliance programs integrating the tools of social media that I have come across. In fact, I think you're really only one of just a handful of companies using those tools, and he's agreed to take some time from his busy schedule to visit with us today about what he has implemented and how it's working out for him. So with that somewhat long-winded introduction, Louis, thanks a lot for agreeing to come on the podcast.
Well, thank you very much, Tom. I'm looking forward to talking about some of the things we're doing here.
I heard about what you guys were doing at Compliance Week 2015, this conference this past year in May, and like I said, you're just really only one of two companies I've heard of utilizing really anything close to the social media tools, but you use this as a communication tool, not in one direction, meaning just down from compliance to your employee base, but really as a communication tool both up and down the chain. So maybe you could start with what you do and how you do it.
Sure. So I want to give credit to our senior leadership, specifically our CEO, Bob Kerrigan. He started with us a couple of years ago, and he made it very clear that he thought that social media was of great value, and he wanted all of us within the company to rethink the way we look at social media. And so that prompted us. And from there, we saw social media as having great opportunities, both internally and externally, and have used to varying degrees different tools of social media to accomplish internal and external goals. I think the way we now look at social media, it is an integrated and integral part of our communications programs. And you think about the external-facing social media tools like a Twitter or LinkedIn or Facebook, and how can you use that and for what purpose? And I think there's at least two main purposes we would use those for. One is as information sources. I think that Twitter is a great information source for the CCO. I look at my Twitter feed daily. Certainly don't get to see absolutely everything on there. I'm far too busy for that. But I pick up on a weekly basis a couple of really great articles that talk about what others are doing and how others are seeing the compliance world that we can incorporate into our own work and also share across our business so that our business people and our employees understand the external and compliance environment. The other thing we use those external resources for is to make sure that we use the opportunity to enhance our own brand in the marketplace. I think that any company's trust with their customers and third parties starts with having a strong compliance base and a strong compliance culture. And the ability to be able to speak to to that externally when appropriate and in proper ways, I think it's great. We certainly we've won Ethisphere's award as one of the world's most ethical companies now 7 years in a row, and that's the kind of thing that I think any company should shout from the rooftops. And I think the virtual rooftop nowadays are social media outlets such as Twitter, and so I think that having the opportunity to tweet about things like that is all to the better for the company. And then I think you flip that around and say, okay, so that's external facing. We do use it for the purposes of informing our employees, and we certainly deal with third parties and make sure that we're building our brand. But I think the opportunities for social media as a communications tool are even bigger when you talk about internal social media tools. The tech-savvy employees of today, emails are almost a thing of the past in the eyes of many employees, and it seems ridiculous to say that because it's not so long ago that emails weren't even in our environment. But the fact of the matter is that the more tech-savvy employees you have, the more likely they are to be dealing much more in social media, dealing with things that are real time and not an inbox of email. So we have an internal social media tool called Chatter. It comes from our Salesforce.com app, but I know that several other companies have other internal social media tools, and we've done a couple of things to really try and engage our team members and employees throughout the world in valuable ways through that. One is sort of the periodic, if there's information that you want to share, get out there and use it. I think one of the most successful things that we've done is create a branded presence in that space. So much like you can hashtag things on Twitter, in the Chatter world you can as well, and we've created a hashtag Do the Right Thing. Our compliance program, most of our compliance program is branded Do the Right Thing in one way, shape, or form. But hashtag Do the Right Thing is one of the hashtags that trends the most in our Chatter environment internally. And it's because people are now comfortable talking about compliance-related topics and issues, and it's fun to see on the screen that when you pull it up when hashtag Do the Right Thing is one of the first or second hashtags that people are talking about. It really gives you, as a CCO, a good feeling that you're creating an environment where people's thoughts and opinions are really welcomed, especially on issues like compliance. So how do we get there? I think.
Look, if I could I stop you there and maybe explore
please.
Chatter?
I can talk a lot about this, Tom. It's a good topic for me.
But on Chatter, I've heard you talk a couple of times now about how you actually have chat ups. I'm not sure that's the term you use, but how does that work, and how do you get questions? Do you get comments? What happens if you get something that you think is sensitive, or do your employees generally respect that their boundaries to this form of communication and would take a more serious problem offline directly to you? How does all of that work for you?
So what we do, and we use the term Chatter Jam. It's a real-time social media discussion, and what we do is we get members of my team in a room, and we'll do it at different times of the day to make sure that we are hitting time zones globally, because we are a global organization and we want to make sure it's open to everybody. We seed the environment. We seed it first with some expectations of what we're talking about, and also reminding people of the importance of treating people with respect, and also giving people some education additional education about if they have specific and individual concerns and questions and problems in their environment, of places to go with that, whether it be the hotline, whether it be contacting me personally directly, or their leaders or otherwise. And then after seeding the environment with that, we'll normally have topics that we'll talk about. So when we were updating our code of conduct last year, we had a chatter jam about the code of conduct, about what people saw as valuable within the code of conduct, if there are things that people wanted to see in the code of conduct that they hadn't. We even talked about the naming of the code of conduct and what they might like to see instead of just the words code of conduct. Now, ultimately, it was clear that people wanted "do the right thing" as one of those names, and so you'll see on our code of conduct it is now "do the right thing," So we use those chatter jams periodically, I'd say every few months, and they are tied to something. So when Compliance and Ethics Week comes around in November, you can bet we will do a chatter jam. We'll do probably 3 in a given day, so that we make sure that we hit all time zones. And we really open up the environment and give people the opportunity to talk and give their thoughts and opinions about what compliance means to them and what it means to our company. I tend not to worry too much about the concerns people have. People, I think, have a lot of angst about people using social media for ill. And it can happen. I'm not suggesting it can't happen. But I think if you set the stage right for people and make sure that you make clear the importance of treating people with respect, you can create an environment where people are comfortable talking and people are comfortable giving their opinions in a way that isn't attacking others. And maybe it's luck, and maybe it's just the way we've gone about it. We luckily have not had the kinds of problems that I know others might fear in a social media environment.
Listen, if I could turn now to your use of social media externally, if that might be a phrase, with both your customers, your customer base, and your third parties. How do you use social media tools in compliance for that member constituency of the greater D&B family?
Sure. So with many of our third parties, certainly some of the contractors we have, things like that, they actually do have access to some of our chatter tools. And so we are able to connect with a lot of our third parties through the internal social media. And then the external, how we would connect is we use not only my own Twitter handle at Louis CCO but at DNB USA, at DNB International. Our CEO has a Twitter handle, and we will be consistently communicating out to the greater body of customers and the like about the things that we're doing and how we're doing them. And I think that it's a really important communication tool to make sure you're getting your messages out there.
I was gratified when you used one phrase. You talk about having a tech-savvy workforce. I was gratified you didn't say we have a younger workforce because I think many people worry that to be tech-savvy you have to be younger, i.e. my daughter's age or our children's age. And that's absolutely not true. But
no, not at all. Not at all.
When people think of D&B, I think they think of a service organization. Would that be a fair characterization, or is your business model broader? But what led to having this sort of tech-savvy workforce?
Well, I think that we are a data-inspired organization, and we bring truth and meaning through data to our customers. And so the concepts now that you see in the marketplace of big data, and then everybody's talking about the use of data. Well, Dun & Bradstreet has been in that world for a long time when we talk about businesses and information about businesses. And so we naturally are technology driven because of what we do and the products and services we deliver. So being a tech-savvy organization is part of who we are at our core, and it is as we continue to work on modernizing the products and services we deliver, it's a part of our core strategy to continue to operate in a modern tech-savvy way. And I think that's one of those drivers that our CEO Bob Kerrigan brought to us when he's thinking about social media and about other opportunities in technology. I think it's a part of who we are and who we should be, being a data-inspired organization.
You mentioned a couple of times in connection with Chatter that you used the phrase Chatter Toolbox. Are there other social media tools available to you in Chatter that you're using beyond the Chatter Jam?
Well, so Chatter, you can think of it very much like a Twitter. So Chatter, anybody can post, and then anybody can reply to those posts and favorite or like those posts. So it's a little bit of a combination between the Twitter environment and the Facebook environment. And the way you can build out Chatter, you have groups, so you can build a group for certain employees if you happen to be a member of the people team, or we call our human resources team the people team. You may have a group of people for the people team, and so they'll just post things to that group. So you, in order to use this social media tool, any posting, you want to make sure you identify it. What's the purpose of that posting? And the way you identify things within the post is similar to the Twitter world. You'll have @ symbols for if you're identifying individuals, and each of our employees and those on the Chatter environment have their name with an @ symbol. And then also a topic, so a hashtag. In the case of when we're talking about specific regulatory environments, we might talk about, if we're talking about privacy, we might have a hashtag for privacy so that people know if they want to know about privacy, they can put in that hashtag to search for what's been talked about. And then we'll always have the hashtag do the right thing so that everything that we talk about in compliance is properly branded that way.
Are there any other tools that you're utilizing in the social media space to help either get the message of compliance out or have communications back to you as the CCO or your department?
So I think from a tool standpoint, that's probably the environment of tools that we are currently using. The way we use it and the things that we do with it are constantly changing. So making sure that we are posting not just a question or a comment, but if we have video vignettes and articles and things like that, we will make sure we are using the tools that we have within the environment in that way as well. The fact is that I think that social media as a tool becomes an easy thing to jump in with both feet on if you really see yourself as if you're a compliance professional, if you see yourself as a culture builder, then being a part of that culture wherever it may lie, whether it lies at the water cooler or the virtual water cooler of social media, you jump into those areas as much as possible and make sure that the conversation is made real in those places.
How have I'm always intrigued or perhaps even concerned about the language barrier for those outside the United States. Many companies, even having an English only or English first communication policy worldwide, we have to recognize that there are variations in English across the globe. Have you had any trouble dealing with that in the context of your social media program?
It's a challenge, no question about it, and one that I don't think we have tackled fully. But as we become a more global organization, issues in language become more and more important for us to face head on. The communications that we send out as a compliance team are all translated into all of the languages that our employees speak as their first languages. But even beyond that, when we have conversations in English, we will often set up situations where if there are groups of employees where English is not a language of choice or a language that employees are able to speak fluently, we will try and have them in spaces where they have somebody to translate available to them. It's certainly not a perfect system yet, but I think that the more you can do to make your communications feel like they were made for the person, the better. If all of your communications come across as English communications, there's too much of a tendency to think, well, those communications are just things from headquarters.
Right.
And you really want to bring information to people in a format that feels like it was made for them. We do that with our trainings and as much as possible with all of our communications to make it feel like it was written for the person wherever they may sit.
It's really a great insight. We're getting near the end of our time, but I wanted to leave a little bit of time because there's something completely unrelated to your work as a CCO I wanted to visit with you about, and I noted that you went to law school at Rutgers University and were indeed a member of the board of trustees at Rutgers.
I did indeed, and so yes, as of last year, I get to join in the Big Ten conversation finally.
Well, and that's what I wanted to ask you about because I attended graduate school at Michigan State and law school in Michigan, so I get to wave some Big Ten flags when I'm not waving my UT flag. How do you feel about joining the Big Ten, and where do you think Rutgers is going to shake out this year?
Well, I think joining the Big Ten is great for so many reasons, and frankly, I'm one of those odd birds that actually sees all of the great academic reasons for joining the Big Ten, as much and more so than the athletic reasons. But this will be a really interesting year. I think for a first year in the Big Ten last year, Rutgers did really well, reaching a bowl game, and excuse me, let me just clear my throat, and winning its first game against Michigan last year. I was at that game, and I must say the crowd went absolutely ape when it happened. It was wonderful to see. But this will be a really interesting season, seeing how we can step it up. We had a tough loss last week to Washington State.
Right. Louis, I really appreciate you taking time to visit with me. You have really given a lot of information that I hope a lot of compliance practitioners can consider going forward. I'm a big advocate and evangelist for the use of social media in your compliance program, and I hope to be able to not only continue the conversation, but perhaps we can jointly evangelize together on this point.
So I would love to. I want to just leave one thought. So
all right.
I want you to realize I actually do watch my Twitter feed, and I follow you, Tom. So this morning I saw a tweet from you, and you tweeted about an article called Design Thinking and Compliance. It was a really interesting article talking about the CCO 3.0 and how the compliance mindset really requires people to burn compliance into the DNA of your workforce. And the only way we do that is to connect with our people where they want to be connected with. And I think social media is certainly one of those great points of connection that we as compliance professionals need to be more and more comfortable with. And I'm sure there will be a new way of connecting coming around the pike, and we'll have to be ready for that too. So I agree with you. Let's get out there and evangelize a bit on it.
All right. Well, thanks a lot.
Thank you, Tom. Great talking to you.
Hello everyone, this is Tom Fox. I'd like to thank you again for listening to episode 199 of the FCPA Compliance and Ethics Report. I have 2 calls to action for you. If you could go to iTunes and rate this podcast, I would greatly appreciate it. Also, I am developing a list of questions for my next mailbag episode. So if you have any questions you'd like explored, please email them to me at tfox@tfoxlaw.com. Thank you very much for listening.